Okay, thank you very much. My name is Jarrison Chilongo. I'm presenting Group 3 on the part of the introduction and background on this assignment of finance and decision making for projects. The team composition is as can be seen on the screen. There's myself, Willard, Masebo, Tracy Mponera, and Kevin Nkwimba. In terms of the presentation outline, we'll first discuss the objectives, then we'll make a brief summary of the financial analysis approaches. Then we'll briefly discuss the two construction companies whose audited financial accounts have been analyzed. Thereafter, we'll now proceed to the actual detailed financial analysis of the statements. We'll move next to the recommendations and we'll then conclude. With regard to presentation objectives, through this, we intend to demonstrate that adoption of appropriate financial analysis methods in project management produces it has a direct linkage to the success of the project and gives the managers an opportunity to make decisions based on figures or proper decision making tools based on the information available and prudence in the financial statements themselves. To achieve this, we'll analyze the statements of the two real construction firms through the use of different methods as will be outlined in the slides to follow. Okay, worth mentioning at this point is that according to Harrison, he alludes to the fact that there are many ways of carrying out the financial analysis. However, there are two overarching umbrella methods, which are horizontal and vertical. Horizontal being where the comparison is across years, like the current year compared with the previous year, and so on, maybe one quarter against another quarter, but the figures are within a row denoting that horizontal element of comparison. While vertical, it's like within the same statement, but you are comparing how the statements are faring within a column. Like for instance, you'd compare liquid assets versus the rest of the assets as percentages within the same financial statements. So whatever ratios or whatever method we're using to analyze our financial statements, in one way or another, fall under these two umbrella categorization. That said, worth noting also, according to GOIL 2016, that there are other ratios which are like global by nature, under which there are now smaller or lower category ratios which fall under those broad categories. And under that, profitability, efficiency, solvency, liquidity, and market ratios. But for our presentation, we have used the first four from the above list, and these have been used to analyze the two construction companies which we have already mentioned earlier, and the analysis has been over the years of 2020 and 2021. Next, I'll take you briefly to the two construction companies. We have picked Dika Construction Company and Solid Construction Company. They both operate in the civil engineering construction industry. And as mentioned in the previous slide, we are comparing their financial stand over the years 2020 and 2021. But now you may wonder, why pick companies in the similar category? Well, the reason is simple, as alluded to by Cole et al. This provides a platform for fair comparison, logic, as elements are compared, similar elements are compared across the companies. It's like we are comparing apple to apple, orange to orange. So these two companies carry out similar activities, operate in similar environments, and their investments are almost the same. Therefore, we chose these two companies to provide that platform for fairness and logic in the comparison. At this point, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Tracy to proceed with the next section of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jarrison. So I'm Tracy Mponela. I'm going to take you through the detailed financial analysis of the two institutions as highlighted by my colleague. So as he mentioned, the analysis has been done for a period of 2 years, 2020 and 2021. And the detailed analysis was categorized in 4 sections. That's profitability, efficiency, liquidity, and solvency. So I will focus much on the profitability segment, where the profitability ratios were conducted, and we zeroed into the gross profit ratio, net profit ratio, and also return on capital employed. So specifically on the gross profit ratio, an analysis was conducted, and the results show that there was a decrease in both companies. The gross profit ratio decreased in both companies. That's so gross profit ratio, as I already mentioned, measures the company's ability in making profits. That's generating gross profit from its revenue. So the analysis has shown that both Dika Construction Company and Solid Construction Company declined as regards to gross profit ratio, as it is indicated in the graph herein. However, maybe just to mention that there was a slight decrease as for Dika Construction Company as compared to Solid Construction Company, but both gross profit ratio declined. However, as argued by Brian and Eradit in 2016, that indeed it is not advisable just to rely on the gross profit ratio analysis in determining the profitability of the companies, as the gross profit ratio does not provide a comprehensive outlook of the profitability. So therefore, we went further to do the net profit ratio analysis, as argued by Arnott. So net profit ratio provides insight into the company's ability to generate profit from its operations. And from the outlook, would see that generally there was an improvement for both companies as regards to the ratios. For Dika Construction Company, in 2020, it was at a negative 12.4, and then there was an improvement to negative 4.1. So that just to mention that indeed, despite there was an improvement, Dika did not do well during the review period. While Solid Construction Company, there was an improvement by 20% of the net profit ratio from 7.2 to 8.7. So that's how the two construction companies are faring as regards to profitability. Going further to the return on capital employed ratio. So this ratio measures the profitability of a company in relation to the capital that has been invested in its operations. So that's according to Arnold. So of key interest, you might note that there was a great improvement for Solid Construction Company, as the ROS improved from 25% to 59%. And then there was a decrease as regards to the loss from negative 2.0 to 3 for Dika Construction Company. All right, so reaching this far, let me hand over to my colleague Willard to proceed with the detailed financial analysis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trace. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Willard Marcel. I'm a member of the group as already indicated by Mr. Jason in the introduction. I'll take you through the remaining tools which we use to do the analysis of the finances. I'll take you through the efficiency ratio, the solvency, and then we'll finish with the liquidity being the quick ratio. Now, to start with efficiency ratio, as we all are aware, this is a tool which basically helps the company or the business to efficiently or cohesively evaluate its resources as to how they help the company to generate the revenue, and at the same time looking at how they control the cost as they do their business. Now, just looking at the whole idea of efficiency was saying just to control the operation cost, and we went on to say, okay, how do we proceed? We have a mathematical representation with us, of which we did get some information from the data we used and patched in the formula. From there, we managed to come up with a graph. And just looking at the graph, I haven't managed to indicate the information on the graph, on the tables, but I saw it necessary to have the graph so that everyone else should be able to see the trend of the information. Looking at the efficiency of the company, especially Dika, we see that in terms of its ratio, it went down from 0.09 in 2020 and went on to 0.01 in 2020, which is a decrease of about 60% thereabout. And according to Blood 2002, that is an indication that the company has spent more money on its operation, because we see the decrease if you look at the graph, you're able to see the decrease of its efficiency. On the other hand, we see that just looking at the graph itself, we see that the solid construction company ratio made at least an improvement. It moved from 0.2 to 6.7, which means that the company, especially solid construction company, it optimized its resources, which in this case we're looking at the funds in the operation of their activities. The other tool which we used this time around is solvency. As we all are aware, solvency is basically there to help the company determine its long-term financial health, and at the same time, it gives us a hint on the ability of a company to settle its long-term debt obligation of its business. And this time around, we zero in to the specific current ratio, which is under the solvency. And as argued by the March 2012, the company current ratio can be determined by looking at its current assets by the current liabilities as a mathematical representation. Now, if you go into the table, I've tabulated the information from the data we got, summarized into the table. Moving fast and into the specific elements of each construction, we see that for the Dika construction in 2020, its current ratio moved from 4.8 to 1.9 there, which was a decrease in that order. Similarly, for the solid construction, we see that the current ratio moved from 2% to 1.8%, which is also a decrease. And as you see you look at the graph there, you see that Dika had a huge decrease. It was actually going towards the negative direction, but then the good news is in terms of the ratio, they're still in the positive side. So that shouldn't be a cause for them to worry. But of course, in terms of its solvency, it has gone down a little bit, which is the same as for solid construction, of which, if you look at its percentage, it didn't go down very much, but then it is still taking the same trend. Still more for solid construction, it's not that thing to cause a worry, because that's still within the positive side of the ratios, a thing which still give them an ability to be able to sort out some issues to do with debt. They can manage to pay their debt, much as they might have some problems because of that decrease in a ratio. So, as argued by Gower 2016, I've already indicated anyway, Mr. Gower trying to give us more insight on the justifications regarding the current ratios. So let me move on to liquid ratio. So liquid ratio, basically, we're looking at the ability of a company to meet its immediate financial needs. That is to say, we're looking at its ability to use its liquid assets to sort out its immediate financial needs, because there are times when a company maybe needs to handle some issues, or they need to buy some stationaries for the company. They need quick money for them to be able to do that. Now, the liquid ratio, it helps us to determine the ability to be able to organize funds real quick within shortest time period. And that is basically done by looking at the quick ratio itself and the liquidity ratio, where we have a mathematical representation telling us that we take out the inventory ratio from the current assets, and that gives us the liquid assets. And that liquid assets is now split or divided by the current liabilities of the company. Now, moving on to actual analysis and the findings of the two companies, we see that the quick ratio for Diga Construction deteriorated from 4.3% to 1.3%, representing a decrease of 70% thereabout. Similarly, for solid construction, we see that its quick ratio moved from 2% to 1.6, representing a decrease of 20%. We see that there is a decrease in terms of ratio, moving towards a lower value, percentage-wise. But the good news for the two companies is that that's not really a cause of worry, because they're still in a region where they can be able to address whatever short-term needs which they want, because we see that their values are still positive, unlike when I refer to the slide which Trace showed me about the net profit and the gross profit. It was showing that there's some kind of negative values coming in terms of overall net profit. But with liquid ratio, it tells us that these companies, much as they're showing some negative value, especially TIC, it is still have that capacity to address some short-term or quick issues which might arise in the office, financially wise. So as the graph shows there, we see that in terms of the two companies, the quick ratio moved real quick at a very fast pace, while for the solid quick ratio, it was going at a very reasonable slope. A thing which might prompt us to think or say, okay, maybe these two companies, they should, especially Diga company, should consider looking at their quick ratio to say, how are their quick ratios? Or I mean, not in terms of quick ratio, but quick assets. How are their quick assets being used? Because the drop itself is a cause of worry, much as it is still in the positive side. We can still see that much as the quick ratios are dropping at that rate, we need to understand that a quick ratio, a higher the quick ratio, show that the company has its ability to meet its immediate financial needs. But then looking at the trend itself, we need to also understand that a very high quick ratio, in this case, looking at the 2020 as compared to 2021, especially for DICA, I see both companies have higher ratios in 2020 and low ratio in 2021. We will all agree that in 2020, the companies have higher quick ratios, of which shows that they can manage to pay their debt within shortest time. Similarly, in 2021, they can manage because their ratios are still positive. But what is also important to note is that it's not always that when the quick ratio is very high, then the company is moving in the right direction. Because sometimes a higher quick ratio might mean that maybe the assets or the quick ratios are being underutilized. So it's very important for the companies to be able to strike the balance between using the assets profitable and also maintaining the liquidity of their operations. I wanted to put that point clear. So reaching this far, let me hand over to my colleague, Mr. Kelvin Pimba, to take us through the remaining 2 slides.
All right. Thank you. My name is Kelvin. So after all has been said and done, I need to look at the recommendations, like what do we now tell the company to do? All right. Road construction, as a company, it's very important that it strikes, as far as it's very important to strike a balance between current assets and non-current assets. They should consider investing in non-current assets because we need to balance between the liquid and the illiquid assets, because in the long run, we need to meet our long-term needs through the non-current assets. So this is alluded by Eminem in 2017, who recommends the 2 companies, DICA and Solid, to say, even though that is being done, they need also to consider developing financial monitoring systems, because at the end of the day, they want to monitor and quantify the data throughout periods, quarters, and years. Another author, Rose and Manley, also agrees to say it's really important to monitor the data that these 2 companies are having, because now at the end of the day, we want to look at the financial performance and how they have improved financially in terms of their management. Reaching that far, I'll now conclude with the presentation. So in analysis, it has showed that Solid company really made profits, unlike DICA. Looking at the profitability measures that we have used. And an in-depth analysis of the 2 companies was very important in determining the financial performance of the organizations. So looking also at the 2 evaluations, that is solvency and efficiency, I would see that over time also Solid has done very good in comparison with DICA. And even though being the case, these 2 companies have great potential for improvement, and that is shown in the provision of the evaluations and also recommendations that have been made. So to sum it up, PEMNAM in 2013 also concludes to say it's really important to comprehensively analyze the financial statement through both angles, which is quantitative and qualitative, because at the end of the day, we want to see a holistic view, a greater view of how the companies are performing by looking at very detailed and comprehensive analysis and through angles. Reaching that far, thank you, colleagues. Can now take. Yes, Kumbu, I see your hand up.
No, I was just trying to say we are almost time up, so we can be concluding.
Okay.
Do we have questions, colleagues? So of the two companies, which company would you recommend to investors to invest in?
I think Jason, you can take that one up.
Of course, thank you. Looking at the trend, one might fear to invest in Dika, but there are some unknowns which are not very clear by just going into the financial analysis. For instance, these guys might have won a lot of contracts and they have invested in the long-term investment in those contracts. So there are other parameters that have to be taken into consideration, but going by the numbers, obviously one would opt to go for solid construction. Thank you.
Yes,
I
Edwin.
think that just to add on what Jason has said, if we just look at the figures themselves, they may not give us a clear picture as to what is happening on the ground. Because if you look at the terrain, because someone might ask to say, what do you think will be the projection in terms of projection? What do you think Dika will be next year or the other year to come? And just based on the figures we have, it is very difficult to give that projection, because we don't know what is the economical situation on the ground, say, come next year. As we all know, our currency is always very, very prone to inflation and all stuff. And at the same time, we don't even know how much in terms of competitiveness of the companies, how will it fare next year. So it's something that just looking at the quantitative analysis and leaving out the qualitative analysis part of it, it's a little bit very difficult for someone to come up with a position. So just an addition on what Jason was saying.
Yes, Edwin, I think we can take the.
Let's take a last question.
I think my question is on the, quick ratio. Is it acid ratio? Where Dika had a much drop in the ratio from 4.8 to 1 point something. And I indicated that a higher ratio does not always indicate that it's a good thing, despite it being an indicator that a firm is able to pay its short-term loans. My question is, what can be some of the ways whereby a firm can utilize its assets to decrease the quick ratio? Here it's indicating 4.3 and there's a decrease to 1.3. The decrease was huge, but you also mentioned that a higher ratio does not really tell or does not actually indicate that the company is able to pay off its loans. Sometimes it's an indication that there are a lot of underutilized assets. So for these firms or any other firms, maybe it can be a general question. How can a firm utilize its assets, and to what average do we intend the ratio to be? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I can take that one.
Okay.
Yeah, the last bit, the literature, I think it's the same goal, preferred a threshold of 2% as being healthy. In terms of how you can utilize those assets to make sure that the company operates within that healthy threshold, the proposal could be, they could think of going into joint ventures with companies who don't have contracts, just to make sure that the fixed assets are being utilized. Joint ventures or hiring out the equipment, such kind of options could be considered. Thank you.
All right, thank you, colleagues.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I believe this should mark the end of the presentation for group number 3. Thank you, guys. Let's go into group number 4.
Thank you.
Thank you.